Today we have Kevin Bright is our guest today, and he's on my screen as Henry. He has two computers open. He said his son's name is Henry. Kevin is the Energy and Sustainability Director for the City of Rochester and the Destination Medical Center. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental geology and a master's degree in energy and environmental analysis. He is a lead accredited professional for two rating systems, building design and construction, and operations and maintenance. He is also accredited as a certified energy manager by the Association of Energy Engineers. He has worked in sustainability and leadership roles at Harvard University, Colby College, and now the DMC and City of Rochester for more than 12 years. Kevin's key duties for the City of Rochester and DMC include implementing the city's energy action plan, supporting sustainability strategies to reduce resource consumption across the organization, and fostering a culture of sustainability. So welcome, Kevin. We're glad to have you here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Can you still hear me all right and everything?
It's a little clunky and freezy, well, but I think it should come around.
My connection's unstable. Okay.
I said, let me try one other thing that might help. Is that a little better?
Much better.
Okay. Now I don't have competing Zooms eating up all my bandwidth, so this should be all right. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, and what I was hoping to speak to today was a community ed course that I think Mary took part of not too many days ago, actually, which is focused on how to live sustainably here in Rochester. It is to work all the way through it, a 2-hour thing, and I'm going to try to condense it into 1 hour. So I'll leave time for questions, but I might kind of move through some of the material a little bit quickly, but that's kind of on purpose just to make sure I can get through it all. That sound good? Okay. Can everybody see the screen and the slides and everything? Yep. Okay. Great. All right, so my camera's here, your faces are all here, so I'll kind of bounce back and forth just so I can see if the information is landing appropriately. And I'm happy to share all these slides afterwards. They do have a bunch of links in them to resources here locally, so I'll share them so you have it and all those links work and everything, and you can use them afterwards, so don't worry about that. Otherwise, we'll dive in. Sound good? Okay. So yeah, this is a quick agenda. So how to start sustainability practices you can integrate at home, at work, getting around town. And then there is a sustainability pledge that the mayor created earlier in 2020. And looking at this particular link, I don't think it's still active. It might've been taken down, but I'll make sure it gets back and active again in case people are interested and willing to take a sustainability pledge. So where to start? How many people, just by a show of hands, have done a carbon footprint analysis before? See one hand. All right. Well, good thing to talk about then. So a carbon footprint analysis is basically just a way to understand how much carbon dioxide you release by your day-to-day activities. And there's a number of calculators online that you can use that can help get at exactly what your emissions related to your lifestyle might be. The one I included in here is from nature.org from the Nature Conservancy. It's pretty easy to use. It does have the level of specificity that if you really want to dive in and put in your utility bills for the year, that kind of thing, you can do that. But if not, it has some kind of pre-plugged numbers in there that you can use to then get a sense of where you might want to focus your attention if your goal is to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions you're emitting. A tool like this is a really good place to start to understand what daily activities am I doing that are really contributing to more emissions on a day-to-day basis. Does that make sense? Okay. So here is the Sustainability Director's carbon footprint report out. It gives you a number of different outputs. This one I thought might just be the easiest one to take a look at. So the outside circle here is what an average person or family in our zip code, mine is 55904, releases over the course of the year. And then it's broken down by these separate pie pieces of travel, stuff at home, the food you eat, the goods you buy, the services that you use. So as you can kind of see, there's already starting to chunk out maybe the top three. If I was going to try to reduce the amount of emissions I'm emitting on an annual basis, I would focus on travel because that's the biggest piece of the pie. And admittedly, this travel piece was informed a little bit by more air travel. And this was kind of pre-COVID, right? But on an annual basis, my family's on the East Coast. So I fly out there probably with my family twice a year to see my family. So things like that, air travel in particular, releases a lot of emissions. So something to keep in mind. And then food is a close second, right? So if I were, again, to focus my attention, travel and food would be the top two, and then home and probably a lot of the utilities that we use in order to heat and cool our home kind of comprise the top three. And that really addresses, as you can see here, almost 80% of our emissions. So that for me helps me frame my thinking a little bit to say, well, maybe those are the three areas. If I'm looking to make the biggest impact with the fewest amount of actions, those are the areas to try to focus on. And I understand not everybody views the world that way, and that's totally fine. But as it's helpful, I found it helpful, so I thought others might too. So from here, we'll kind of talk through what are strategies that we can help address each one of these buckets. That's how the rest of the presentation is kind of set up. So on top of sustainability, we're also focused on resiliency here in the city of Rochester, but also the Destination Medical Center project. And what we mean by resiliency is how can we make sure our infrastructure and our lifestyles are resilient to shocks and stressors that we might experience. So COVID-19 is a great shock or example of a shock to a community, right? We can't travel, we can't do the things we normally want to. And do we have systems in place that can easily or readily respond to a shock like this? And I think what we found over the past year was there's some opportunities for improvement, right? Like our food systems, for instance, and getting food to people in need. There's a huge effort from Olmsted County and the city of Rochester to try to respond to emergency food needs as a result of the pandemic, for instance. So there's already those planning efforts underway to help make our community more resilient. But in the meantime, the question here is, what are some ways that we can make our households more resilient? So that's another frame that I'll have for this presentation here, is ways that we can be more sustainable, but in a number of ways, they're also making your household more resilient and ensuring that we're creating systems that are more resilient to help respond to shocks and stressors here. So the food that we eat, buying as much food locally will help build up those markets locally so that in a time of emergency, we can rely on those things to be there, those local farms, to provide the food that we need so that we don't have to get food from California or from another country and then be burdened by transportation channels and every other community perhaps in the country that's also seeking food from those same exact areas. So the less that we have to compete with other forces outside of our community, but can build up forces or build up systems within our community, the better off we're going to be from a resiliency standpoint. That's kind of the overall goal here. And then the other graphic in here that I like to mention is just neighbors who know each other look out for each other. And this is kind of also comes or has been supported by a body of research in the green building world, where hurricanes that have impacted large cities, oftentimes they've done a lot of research in kind of apartment buildings, and specifically when the power goes out and heating systems go down, where are there lower rates of mortality, just to put it bluntly. And really the lower rates occur in places where there are community rooms, where the multifamily residences have community rooms. And as a result of those community rooms and the networks, just like this one, right? This group here, this group of people obviously cares about each other. There's waving, there's, hey, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. That's great. That's what we want in a community, because ultimately that makes it more resilient. And you all will likely check on each other, and have probably over the past 12 months during shocks and stressors that happen in the community. So I share this graphic because a lot of people, I say, how many people know their immediate neighbors, their adjacent neighbors next to them? So just as a show of hands, how many people regularly communicate with their neighbors on a day-to-day, weekly basis or something like that? Good a number of hands. For those who don't, I would encourage you to try if they're nearby. If they're not, if they're like miles away, then you have a pretty unique living circumstance. So I understand that. But as climate change starts to impact our weather, and we've already seen that it's making our weather more wetter on an annual basis, it's going to be more important that we are looking out for each other, that we're creating these systems to help support each other in times of need. So keep up the good work. So I'm going to quickly go into energy use at home. So these are ways that we can start addressing that home piece of the pie, and ways that we can reduce our emissions associated with our home and lead more sustainable life, sustainable opportunities. So another tool that I'll share here is Energy Star Portfolio Manager. So if you really want to dig in and say, how much energy am I using per square foot in my home? Portfolio Manager through the Energy Star program, which is created by the Department of Energy, can help you do that. Another more simple and kind of passing the buck onto the professional, if that's what you want to do, is a home energy audit. So how many people by a show of hands have had a home energy audit? Nice. We probably got about 50% of the hands. If you haven't had a home energy audit, RPU, as well as the gas company, Minnesota Energy Resources, offers them at a reduced rate, about $50 for an energy audit. And I would highly recommend it. And the benefit of it is it comes up with a list of energy conservation measures that you can integrate into your home, and they're prioritized by the amount of money they'll save you on an annual basis. So we'll say, do this thing first because it'll save you the most amount of money. Do this thing second after that because it'll save you the second most amount of money. And it basically organizes it from a cost effectiveness standpoint. They'll put your home through a little bit of testing. So they'll depressurize your home to understand how many leaks you have around your windows and doors and that kind of thing, and then identify the measures that will help resolve those. So really effective. I think if there's only one takeaway that you get from this presentation today, it's get a home energy audit. If you haven't had one, it'll be well worth your time. So we'll quickly just kind of jump through these 6 opportunities for home energy improvements. So the first is lighting. And probably about 20% of your home's energy use is tied up in your lighting systems, unless you're completely converted to LED, which I bet Tom is, but I don't know if everybody is. I know Tom really works on the LEDs, yeah. So something to keep in mind as you're replacing lighting, or if you want to use LEDs in your home, the key things to keep in mind are the shape of the lamp. So in here is a link to every shape of a lamp that's out there. It also happens to be printed on your lamp. So if you unscrew a light bulb, it's printed on the side of it most times. So that'll help you. Color temperature is another one. So this is measured in Kelvin, and it's the temperature or the color that's emitted from a black body radiator when heated up to a certain temperature. So when it says 4100 Kelvin, that's a really hot temperature, but it'll start emitting a bluish tint. I'm just telling you this in case you're really curious, but otherwise the next slide kind of shows like what this actually means in terms of color temperature and how you can best match what you have in your home. Then the third question to ask is dimmable or not. So are your light switches on dimmers? And for the lamps that are, you'll want to buy a dimmable lamp versus just a regular lamp. If all this is confusing, what I normally do, because I am pretty forgetful, is I just unscrew the lamp and I bring it with me to the hardware store and I say, I want an LED equivalent of this and it needs to dim. And then somebody helps me find it. Because if you walk into Home Depot or one of these other chain stores, you'll see a whole wall of lighting options and it can be pretty overwhelming. So that's the easiest way to do it. And there's no shame in that game because I've done it a number of times. The other good part is RPU offers lighting incentives. So as you're replacing these light bulbs, they'll help defray the costs up somewhere between 25 to 30%. So almost a quarter to a third of the cost, they'll reimburse you for those purchases. And then if you're replacing an entire light fixture, Energy Star has certifications for light fixtures that are more efficient than others. They help recognize the top 25% performing light fixtures in the market. So that's a good resource to use too as you're starting to research light fixture replacements for your home if that's something you're looking at. So color temperature, this is that black body radiator that I was talking about. So usually home lighting systems or light bulbs range somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 Kelvin. The 3,000 Kelvin is more of like an orangish kind of hue like you would expect from an incandescent bulb. But if you're looking something closer to like what daylight would mimic or the light spectrum from daylight, 4,000 to 5,000 Kelvin would be appropriate for that. I share this because some people buy light bulbs and they're shocked when they see that it's in the 4,000 to 5,000 Kelvin light spectrum. They say, I didn't want this bluish light. This is weird. I'm not used to it. So if you're used to kind of an incandescent orangish glow, then like the 2,700 to 3,000 Kelvin is probably what you should be planning for and expecting. So I can't see any of the chats too, so I'm just say that in case people have questions or anything. Feel free to interrupt me as I'm working through it or ask any questions you have.
If people want some help with lighting, I mean, I got more light bulbs than I can possibly ever use, and I give a whole bunch of them away. But, you know, if you wanted to try like the 2,700 versus the 5,000, you know, and different style bulbs, I probably have those bulbs and I could loan them out or give them out or whatever, because I have a whole bunch of information on that. So anybody that would want that, get a hold of me.
I was going to say you do have a lighting expert here, so,
So anyway,
I would take him up on it if you're curious. LED lights aren't terribly expensive either, so probably somewhere in the $3 to $7 range, depending on what you're trying to buy. Sometimes a little bit more expensive if they're a bigger lamp. So the technology's there and ready. So I would encourage you to do that. And again, that's probably about 20% of your annual energy consumption. From a heating and cooling control perspective, so we'll kind of change gears to that. How many people have a programmable thermostat in their home by a show of hands? So again, we got about 50% of the hands. This is an easy way, another easy way to just reduce a significant amount of energy in your home too. What a programmable thermostat does is basically turns back the temperature for you when you're not there, as a way to help conserve energy. And the amount of energy you save is for every degree that you reduce your thermostat for an 8-hour period over the course of the year, you save about 1% on your energy bill, right? So 1 degree, 1% savings for every 8-hour period. So what we do in our home, I realize ours is probably a little bit more aggressive from a temperature setback perspective than most. But overnight, we turn our temperature down to about 60 degrees since we're all sleeping. And then when we get back up, we bump it back up so it's closer to 67, 68 degrees during the day. That's kind of what we keep our house at during the wintertime. And in the summertime, we're on kind of the upper end of the spectrum, right? So we're not keeping our house at 68 degrees all year. In the summertime, we're about 74 degrees that we keep our house at. But usually our windows are just open most of the time, unless we're in that like 2-week period where it gets super humid. Then we turn on an air conditioning system. But if you're buying a programmable control, a couple questions to ask yourself. Does it have a line, low line voltage to it, or is it battery powered? And if you're replacing one of those like mercury dial thermostats, those have a mercury vial in it that tell your system to kick on or off. So you'll need a battery powered programmable thermostat to replace that. A line voltage one is something it'll have like a brown cord connecting to the back as you pull it off the wall. That way you'll know that it has line voltage to it. It's not a high voltage. So if you do happen to get a little tickle from it, usually you'll be okay. It's about 10 volts versus like a plug in the wall. It's like 120 volts, right? So speaking from personal experience, I live to tell about it. So the other question is just what does it control? So each house is different. So the equipment that it might control is different. So a furnace, most people have furnaces, at least in the Midwest, and an air conditioning system. You might have a heat pump or something else. So just keeping in mind or writing down before you go to the hardware store is a good idea. And again, programmable controls are also an opportunity for incentives too. So your gas company and Rochester Public Utilities, if you live in Rochester, will help defray the cost of those. Probably the lowest cost Energy Star rated programmable thermostat you can buy is about 25 to 30 bucks. So again, a pretty low cost opportunity for your house. The next one I want to talk about is just domestic hot water. So if you have a hot water heating system in your home, you'll probably go down there and look at it and see that it has this really helpful non-numeric how hot is the water that I'm keeping in my tank at this moment. And it has a circle, a triangle, and maybe A, B, and C. And the only thing that says on it is after C, it says very hot. When it says that, it means it will scald you. So don't turn it up to that. But a quick opportunity to save energy is this triangle usually represents 120 degrees on most units. And probably the hot water in your house for dishwashing or shower use is probably a little bit lower than that is comfortable. So around 115 degrees is probably what would suit you. So a very quick thing to do is just lower it slightly below that triangle setting, and you'll save not a huge amount of energy, but probably a percentage or two over the course of the year on your utility bill. So it's something to take a look at after today. Then home energy improvements. So as you're replacing appliances, it really doesn't make financial sense to rip out a perfectly operational appliance in your home and replace it with an Energy Star alternative. But if one of your appliances reaches the end of its life and you need to replace it, an Energy Star certified appliance really does make a lot of financial sense. I'm trying to get rid of this toolbar. Hopefully it's not messing things up too much, but this is a dishwasher here that's comparing just a regular unit with this green line, and then a blue unit represents the Energy Star level, and this is for the amount of electricity it uses per year. And then the graph below it shows the water consumption savings, and this is over time, just demonstrating what the power of the Energy Star certified label is really representing. So the Energy Star label, which I'm sure most people are familiar with, just recognizes that top 25% performing equipment on the market. And this is showing really what that certification level means compared to the rest of the units that you could buy at the hardware store. So this is for clothes washer. And then the next graphic over here is showing a dishwasher. So it's comparing hand washing, where the tan dishes here are water costs and the white dishes are energy costs, and showing the difference between an Energy Star dishwasher and hand washing your dishes on a daily basis. This doesn't account for if you're like filling up a tub, right, and only have that tub with soap in it, and you're like doing kind of the camp style dishwashing method. If you do that every day, your sustainabilities are. If you're not, and you just kind of leave the water running, that's what's kind of represented in this hand washing comparison between a dishwasher and otherwise. So those are some quick appliances that really kind of consume a considerable amount of energy and and do have Energy Star certifications for them. So dishwashers, refrigerators, freezers, and clothes washers are probably the big collection of those. And then the next one is plug loads. So the use of power strips, particularly with entertainment systems, helps defray what we call phantom energy loads or phantom energy consumption, which is that equipment tends to pull electricity 24/7, 365. And a power strip, if you shut it off, it'll cut power to all those things, so they're not consuming that electricity. But there are things called smart power strips, where you have one kind of plug that's identified on the power strip that controls all of the other ones. So let's say you have a TV, but then you have your entertainment system and speakers and I don't know, maybe your Wi-Fi network or something else. You probably wouldn't want your Wi-Fi network on if you use your internet all the time, but bear with me here for the purpose of the example. But let's say you turn your TV off and it's in that predominant control for the rest of the strip. Once that TV shuts off, it'll shut off power for all the other things that are connected to that entertainment system automatically for you. So it's a kind of a little bit more of a fancy power strip. It's about $20 versus a power strip you can get from the hardware store is like $3 to $4. In case you don't want to go up and flick that switch to turn it off every time, but that'll make sure that you're cutting off that phantom energy load. And again, this is really probably something that's like a very fine energy savings compared to some of these other things that we're going to be talking about. So this wouldn't be your first action by any means, but if you're really looking for that A+ grade in terms of energy savings, this is something you could also consider. This next slide here is talking about water savings. And particularly the water savings that we're looking for are the ones to focus on first, I guess, are the twofers, which are kind of these ones here. The shower heads, the kitchen sink aerators, and the bathroom sink aerators. And the reason why I call those twofers is they save water, but they also save heating energy. Most people use natural gas to heat their water in their homes. Some people have electric hot water heaters, and that's fine too. But what we're talking about here is reducing the flow rate from those fixtures so that you save water, but then also save gas or electricity. How many people have gone through and replaced shower heads or sink aerators in their homes? Nice, good number of people. Still about that 50% level, which is good. So a lot of opportunity out there. I will say not all shower heads are created the same, or low flow shower heads. If it's something you never looked at, you probably have a shower head that's about 2.5 gallons per minute. That's what GPM means. A low flow shower head would be 1.75 or 1.5 gallons per minute, right? Which is a pretty significant water reduction and also gas reduction as a result of that. I would say I wrote 75 energy audits for pretty large buildings at Harvard for a period of 6 years. And every residence hall we went into was replace all the shower heads with low flow shower heads. Far and away, very inexpensive thing to do, but would have a pretty phenomenal energy savings because most people take a shower every day. It's kind of a comfort thing, I think, but also just a way that people kind of move about their day. College kids tend to take even longer showers than most. You know, that might resonate with this crowd a little bit, right? Where we would calculate it as a 5-minute shower and the savings would be phenomenal. And we're like, we're pretty sure these kids are not taking 5-minute showers every day. But as I said, not all units are the same. We, through kind of a testing methodology that we use with college students, but also people in our office, arrived at a Delta product. Delta, like the airline. I don't have stock in Delta water products, but I'm just sharing this in case it's interesting and you don't want to buy like a not as great performing low flow shower head. But it was a Delta H2O kinetic shower head that we used. I didn't type it in here because I don't want to be accused of like peddling products or anything, but as it's helpful. The other thing I'll mention is that the gas company, if you're a Minnesota Energy Resource customer, has free sink aerators and shower head program. So if you say, I'm a gas customer, I live at this address, they'll send you these things for free at no cost to you. I will say the shower head in there is okay. The kitchen sink aerator that they offer you is very good. And then the sink aerators that they offer are also pretty good. So if you try the shower head and it doesn't work, I'd say don't give up on it yet. There are better ones out there like that Delta product that I mentioned. Shift gears to kind of just the things that save water. So there are water sense rated fixtures. The Environmental Protection Agency goes through and labels fixtures in your home through a third-party rating system called WaterSense. So similar to the Energy Star program, except that it only focuses on plumbing fixtures. The benefit of that is, right, if you need to buy a new toilet, if you've never replaced your toilets in your home, you probably have a 3.5 gallon per flush toilet. And the WaterSense rated units are 1.28 gallons per flush. So even more than half of the reduction per flush, but it still does the job. That's part of what the WaterSense program does, is make sure that it can get all the stuff out of the toilet and not create clogs or things like that. Then kind of the next level is if you have a home garden, you can capture rainwater. Olmsted County has rain barrel installation instructions, which are linked here. They're also readily available at local hardware stores. It's something you can connect to your gutter system and then use that to help water your plant garden if you'd like. And then the next one or final thing is just repairing leaks. So if you do notice a leak in your house, it does start to add up over time. And this is just kind of a nice little diagram, I think, to show like the type of leak you may see and the amount of water that you might be wasting each month as a result of that leak. So a slow, steady drip, like 100 drops per minute, adds up to be about 350 gallons a month, which isn't a ton of money, but probably like $2, $4 a month or so in water costs. But we're all here because we care about the earth, I think. So whatever we can do to help save our precious natural resources, especially potable water, is well worth it. Next thing I want to mention on the home energy improvements is doing this home energy audit. If you haven't had an audit done of your home, probably the first two things that will be identified is adding attic insulation to R40. R40 meaning the level of thickness in your attic to help prevent the amount of heat that's being lost to the atmosphere. The second one is going to be a basement rim joist insulation recommendation. So most homes have a cement foundation, and then the wood part of your home sits directly on top of that cement foundation. What the basement rim joist insulation does is closes off any air gaps that exist between where that wooden part of your home sits on top of your cement foundation and seals that up. So that'll be energy conservation measure number 1 and 2 if you haven't had an audit. And again, they offer pretty significant incentives to help cover the cost, at least 25 to 33% of the cost of that in order to make sure it gets done in your house. To put it in perspective, I moved into my house here in Rochester. I live right next to Mayo High School. It was built in 1960s. My attic insulation was about at a R19 level, which compared to R40 is half of what I should have if I were building a home to code today. And code is what you're legally allowed to do. The minimum amount of things you're legally allowed to do. And my house that I moved into, built in the 60s, had half of that. So technology's changed, but also our understanding of the importance of insulation has changed quite a bit over time in terms of home and building construction. So we insulated our attic, right? And lo and behold, it really made a difference. It made our house feel a lot more comfortable. What they do is they help air seal around any of the fixtures. So I'm on the second floor. This is a fixture. There's a hole in my ceiling that goes up into my attic where the electrical lines then come down from my attic and connect to this. They seal around all of those penetrations and then put a bunch of new insulation on top of it. So the air sealing is important, right? Because it makes sure that any of the warm air that's in our living space on this floor doesn't just immediately go into our attic and then we heat the atmosphere, which isn't good for our wallets or the planet. As well as then putting more insulation on top. So the rate of heat loss through our attic insulation is a lot less, or is a lot slower. So both of those are really good things to keep in mind. Next two are door sweeps and door weather stripping and window weather stripping. A story that I shared with Mary and the rest of the class last week was about my parents who, despite being smart, don't listen to their kids. They said they had really leaky windows. And I said, I'm pretty sure it's not the actual panes of glass that are the problem, but it's probably the seal around the windows or the seal between the jambs of the window that are causing and making them feel leaky to you. So instead of buying a whole new window system, which can be on the order of $700 to $1,000 per window installed, why don't you just spend more time sealing around them, or asking someone to help you do that, which would be on the order of $100 a window to help make them feel better and your house less drafty. Didn't listen to me. That's fine, right? Despite me being asked to listen to them for like 36 years, right? And they just replaced all of their windows, spent a lot more money than they needed to, but they felt fine about it, right? So like everyone was happy in the end. But if you think you need new windows, I would say you probably need to air seal around your windows first. That would be the first step. And if that doesn't work, then think about replacing your windows. The secondary kind of insulation things have to do with duct insulation and then pipe, heating hot water pipe and domestic hot water pipe insulation. So if you're really a go-getter and you kind of want to save every last BTU, wrapping those pipes in insulation. This insulation you can buy at Home Depot. It looks like kind of like a foam core insulation, circular, so you can just kind of wrap it around the pipes themselves and put them install them in your home. Help just make sure the heat that's captured in those pipes get to the final destination, which is the fixture, the shower head, or the kitchen sink, wherever it might be in your house. So that heat's delivered to where it's needed most effectively. Though if all these pipes are running through occupied spaces, occupied like you hang out in those spaces, there's kind of a minimal energy savings because probably the heat loss from those pipes are actually warming your house somewhat. So if you're comfortable with your heat in your house, then insulating your pipes, you may notice, oh, I need to turn up the temperature setting 1 degree down here because in this case, you're insulating your pipes. So you're losing some of that heat benefit. So all this to say, limit air leakage. And that's really what insulation does. So air leakage through your light fixtures, as shown in this graphic, in and around your windows here, through your chimneys, if you have that going through your house, the attic hatch, in and around your doors. And the reason why is air leakage accounts for 25 to 40% of energy used for heating and cooling in a typical home. And if we think about that for Rochester and Minnesota, probably 50% of our utility bills are being paid to heat our homes or hot water on an annual basis. So a quarter to almost half of that 50% is stuff that we don't need to be paying for and really is just happening because of air leakage that's happening in our house. So the more that we do to address it, the more money we save, the more comfortable we feel, and the better off the planet is. So kind of a win-win-win scenario there. With that, I'll pause for a second because I'm going to change gears to another topic. Any questions on the energy side of things? Go ahead, Terry. I see your hand up.
Hi, thank you so much. This is very interesting. I live in a new construction and I know the builder did everything he could to get all the rebates he could for energy, which is great. But my biggest concern is it's a slab townhome and the water pipes are run under the floor or down in the cold. The closer the faucet is to the heat, the water heater is great, but in the kitchen is the farthest. I have to run the water forever to get hot water. Is there an attachment or something I can put on the tap that will help heat the water, or what can I do?
You can put an under sink hot water heater or kind of instantaneous hot water heater. Probably an electric one is the easiest way to do it. It sounds like to go and try to find that pipe or like make a quicker run or something would be difficult and requires some breaking of concrete, which I don't think would be worth your time. So based on where you are and kind of the new construction timeline of your home and everything, that's probably what I would do. And it's like a little box that has electricity running to it. It connects to your hot water line and it just boosts the temperature before it comes out of the faucet. You'll kind of notice when you turn it on a little humming, but that's making sure that the heater is actually working. So
Yeah.
Okay, and where do you purchase those?
You can purchase one, but you'll probably need help installing it because it is an electrical voltage thing. So it might just be something to call an electrician for. I can
Great,
probably hook you up with one.
thank you so much.
Yep.
Kevin,
Yeah. Yep.
I'm also aware of a device that you can put on that I think in essence, what it's doing, I had one of these in a plant that had a long run and we had to have water hot quickly at a sink. It does a little bit of, I think, a trickle back through the cold water system, but enables that you always have a slight small flow, I believe, to keep that line warmer. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it like a circulating pump or a recirculating pump of some kind?
It wasn't. It was a device that was actually put on at the hot water heater.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, so that could work too. It kind of depends on how the piping system is arranged, of whether or not, and hotels usually use that too, right? So like high-rise hotels that have like 40 floors have a hot water recirculating pump, so that on the 40th floor you're not waiting for the water to rise the other 39 to get to you to take your shower, right? So they constantly pump hot water around their whole building so that whenever any of the fixtures need it, it's pretty readily available. So that's a good point. That could be something too, Terry, to look at, is a recirculating pump or kind of an instantaneous hot water heater booster right under your sink.
You could do the booster there also, right? But
Yep.
It wasn't a real expensive device, and it also didn't recirculate a lot. I mean, it just kept it kind of a trickle through so that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Both good suggestions. So that good, Terry? Feel equipped? Yeah, nice.
Kevin, can
Yep.
you recommend any place where there's a evaluation of the faucets themselves? I know that I have faucets that are, like the single handle, that are very difficult to regulate at a low flow for the, a temperature that I'm looking for.
Yep.
And the other piece that has a connection with Bob's comment about the recirculating pump. We have, in the condo that I live in, we have the recirculating, and we were told by a plumber that some faucets actually have a problem of leaking between the hot and the cold, and they cause problems with the not having the hot water as quickly as you're supposed to, because they leak the cold water into the hot. So I think that there's some real problems with some of the faucets, particularly those of us that go to, the big box store and buy the, whatever is pretty and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, pretty matters too, right? I think the one certification that I referenced, the Water Sense program, is a good one to pay attention to. So any Water Sense certified fixture has gone through third-party testing to make sure that it can function the way that it says it does, both in its flow rate, but also the other sink functionality. And just the ones that haven't gone through that haven't. So you're basically just saying, I'll buy this and hope that it works. So I guess my one recommendation would be to look for Water Sense fixtures, because at least they've gone through the paces of this certification program, and it might not get a fixture that's designed at the lowest flow rate of water that you're seeking, but it might be close enough and it will function very well. And I can speak to that as I bought new sink fixtures for my bathrooms. Again, we're updating a 1960s house, right? So we have some pretty inefficient fixtures. If you're wondering what your sink fixture flow rate is, it's printed on the side of the aerator. So you just have to go underneath the sink and look at your sink, and you'll see what the flow rate is. But as we were replacing ours, right, I was looking for like a 0.5 gallon per minute sink fixture. The best I could find was like a 1 gallon per minute sink fixture, which wasn't ideal. It was double what I was looking for, but it was more than half of what I had. My existing sink fixture was 2.5 gallons per minute. So I was reducing the flow pretty significantly. So it's tough to find perfect, but anything that's progress is still progress. Does that answer your question, Joel? Get to it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Any other questions? We got about 13 minutes left, so I'll try to be mindful of people's time. In case you're looking at solar, here are some solar ideas. I'm just looking at the chat too as we're talking a little bit too. I see Micah is here. Awesome. So, hey Micah, I didn't see your face come up yet. Renewable energy ideas. So if you're looking for solar, Micah is a good resource who's in the chat. If you want to do some initial kind of scouting on your own, Google Project Sunroof is a pretty good program. You just type in your address and it brings up all the roofs in your roof, but all the roofs around you too. So you can kind of see pretty quickly if they're a good candidate for solar or not. So this is my house, right? I live in Southeast in Rochester. My roof is not a good candidate for solar, as you can see, because I'm surrounded by trees pretty much on every side of my house, which do a really good job of shading my roof, which has some other benefits, right? Especially in the summertime, my house doesn't get very hot, which is great, but unfortunately means I can't put a solar system on there that makes financial sense. But you can see around me, there are some roofs that are pretty well suited. This very brightly shining yellow one, for instance, directly facing south, that are good candidates for solar. So if it's something that you're interested in, Google Project Sunroof is a very quick way to just get an understanding of whether or not your roof is a good candidate. In my case, I wasn't, so I decided to purchase renewable energy credits through Rochester Public Utilities, which is another option. You're basically paying a little bit more for the electricity that you consume in your house that helps facilitate future renewable energy projects, hopefully locally. And then the other option is community solar programs. So RPU had one that was offered, I think, a couple years ago at this point. They're starting to build out more solar. And I'm hoping that that is an opportunity for more community solar programs. So what this would be is you'd buy a solar panel that's part of that installation. You would technically own it, and any of the electricity generated from that panel would defray my electric meter at my house. And it's good for people like me where I can't put one on my roof, right? Because all the trees, I'm not going to cut down a bunch of trees to put up a solar system. But I would love to have a solar panel to reduce my electric bill. So a community solar program is another good way to do that. And I'm sure Micah would be happy to answer any other questions too. Micah also referenced conservationmart.com as a link to find low flow fixtures. That was in the chat. So as you're looking, that is a good resource and one I have used a lot. So thanks for putting that in there, Micah. So I'm going to shift gears to landscaping in your yard. And again, this is kind of just a resource heavy slide here. But if you're interested in growing your own food and don't really know where to start, personal experience of mine is I moved here from Maine. In Maine, we had a 5-acre piece of property with a huge garden, and we didn't have any idea what we were doing. So we used a garden planner to figure out what actually grows well in Maine. When should we put these things in the ground? How should we organize our garden? Like, are there kind of natural abilities of different plants to help make each other successful? There's a ton of tools online that can help you do this. These tools are free to use. One is linked here. If you're not sure what to plant, they also help you do that based on where you live on the planet and the type of temperatures that you might expect based on where you live. If you're trying to do other landscaping activities, there are state websites that are linked here that help identify native or adaptive plants to Minnesota. And then also say these are the plants you shouldn't plant, which are invasive plant species, which outcompete plants that are native or adapted to Minnesota and provide some ecological benefits. The invasive species do not, right? They outcompete the plants that provide ecological benefits like seeds and berries that little animals eat and collect and get rid of them. So we don't want to plant those. We want to plant the ones that are good for our ecosystem here. Both are linked here, the good ones and the bad ones. Other resources, if you're looking for a backyard compost bin, that's linked here. The state of Minnesota has a link that can help identify some of the ones that might be most effective. The Public Works program has a lawns to legumes program. So if you're interested in converting some of your lawn, which is the most resource heavy type of plants you can have on your property, you can convert some of it to legumes, and they'll help offer you money in order to help convert a portion of your lawn to more naturally planted, ecosystem beneficial kind of landscaping approach. If you're planting a tree and you don't know where to plant it on your property, iTree exists, and it's a good tree siting program. So you can type in your address, boop, boop, boop. It says based on this property and how your home is oriented. If you have a species in mind, I would say plant that tree species kind of in this gradient area in this particular place around your home. It helps distinguish between deciduous and coniferous trees because there are differences there, and where one loses its leaves, the other keeps its leaves all year. And then if you're looking at ways to reduce irrigation, if you have an irrigation system, Energy Star also has an irrigation tool that can help make some good decisions for you too. So all these are good ideas and resources that are free to use, openly available online, and just require a little bit of curiosity if you're up for it. So I'm going to jump to food. So again, if you think about my carbon footprint analysis, travel was a big one. Food was the second big one. We do eat some meat in our house. but really that's kind of the biggest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions to our home is that we do eat meat in our house, right? I'm not here to tell you what to do. Like, in fact, please don't interpret any of this way. I'm just trying to offer ideas for folks that are trying to reduce emissions. Really kind of the biggest takeaways here is actually the dairy products are kind of not labeled correctly here. So to explain this chart a little bit, it's trying to explain based on the particular food type, the amount of energy it takes to create that food, the amount of land that it takes to create that food, the water, and then ultimately all of those are converted to greenhouse gas emissions per unit of food. So the ones that are labeled green are your best options. The ones that are labeled red are your worst options, right? In that they're just worst from an energy intensity standpoint and greenhouse gas intensity standpoint. So not a ton of surprises here, right? Vegetables, grains, vegetable, animal oils, and fats are good. But meat and meat products are pretty high, right? And that takes a lot of resources to feed a cow for its entire life, to get it to maturity, to then be butchered, to then be created into food. Same with a pig, same with a chicken, right? So if you're trying to lead a more environmentally friendly lifestyle, you would prioritize more plants just because they take less energy to grow, almost by a factor of 10, based on this chart. This isn't the be all end all. I'm not suggesting that it is, but some things to keep in mind if this is something you're interested in doing. So from an environmental standpoint, more vegetables, more fruits. From an economic standpoint, prioritizing local farmers as much as we can is a really good idea. We do have a farmers market that's open twice a week, I think now at this point, that have people growing local food, but also local wares. So if you're trying to be hyper local and support businesses that are immediately adjacent to us here in Rochester, if not in Rochester, that's the place to go and do it. Our supermarkets do a pretty good job of labeling where certain produce comes from. And they usually have little placards labeled in like the apples and tomatoes section that say this is from like Moorhead, Minnesota, right? Those are another opportunity to be local or support local farmers. The farmers market would probably be even more local than some of those produce options at your grocery store. The reason why this is important for our economy is that $1 spent locally changes hands 7 times, right? So if you're supporting a local business, that money recirculates in our economy a number of times and helps support other people too. So there's a couple resources in here, just kind of further diagrams around how much water it takes to grow foods. And again, I'll share these slides afterwards. A nice little video if you wanted to watch that, which is about meat products and the water and energy footprint of meat products. That's from the city of Denver. But given the interest of time and me trying to condense this into 1 hour, I'm going to kind of fly through this a little bit. Let's say you go to work these days and you want to reduce kind of or improve sustainability efforts at work. There are green office programs. So when I worked at Harvard, we worked with specific offices across all schools, law school, business school, everything in between, to have them green office certified. And what that meant is integrating waste reduction efforts, thinking about events and having like permanent dishware on site versus accepting the dishware from restaurants where you usually get like really crummy styrofoam things and a lot of plastic utensils and paper and all those things. We just decided to have all that permanent dishware in our own office so that if we did cater food or bring food in the office, we could use those things. We just wash those things afterwards. Energy use in the office. So how are the settings for like your printers and computers and monitors and that kind of thing, where you're purchasing from, culture and learning. So in our case, we would typically invite a speaker in similar to what you have here on a bi-weekly or monthly basis and kind of learn some things about sustainability and try to integrate them into our approach to our work or at our, just how we use the office. And then health and well-being too. So Harvard's Green Office program has all their materials online. So this is something you're interested in taking or exploring a little bit further. All their materials are here and kind of the different levels of certification that they've outlined and created.
Harvard Ed programs.
So something to keep in mind there. Transportation planning. So there's a lot of planning on the transportation side of things going on here in Rochester right now. So if this is something you're interested in, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of kind of current conversations in this area. But ultimately what all the planning is going on here is just trying to create multiple modes, because the more options that people have, the more resilient the system is. So if one mode goes down, there are other reliable, good options for people to choose from in order to use. In this slide, just kind of, there's a lot of materials or links in this slide, but if you're wanting to reduce the emissions with your commute, there's an Arrive Rochester app that you can use. You can find folks to carpool with, to walk to work with, or you can plan a bus trip using this app. So if it's not something you're familiar with, it's also a website, so arriverochester.com. You can go and visit it. If you want a bike but don't know where to start and would like some support from a group, We Bike Rochester has a social ride during the spring and summer months. All ages attend. And it's meant just a way to help get people out on the trails, be more comfortable on a bike, and kind of understand what's out there. So the city of Rochester has 110 miles of completely protected bikes and trailway systems, which is a huge resource. And actually one of the reasons why I ended up moving here and was interested in the job was like any city that has 110 miles of trail systems has some good thinking behind it. So it encouraged me to move here. And if you haven't used them, I would encourage you to consider it too. If you're interested in the bus system, this is the most helpful bus map that I have found here in Rochester. So I would check that one out. It's not like a PDF that all the other bus lines are on, that if you had struggled through that, I'm sorry, but you don't have to anymore, because there's this link and it's a lot more helpful. If you want to park downtown, there's a Park mobile app, so you can pay for instead of carrying change around, you can pay for a parking meter using that. Then there's a number of mobility sharing programs. So I know not everybody feels the same about scooters or electric bike programs, but I'm a big fan, right? Because they provide people options. Just to put in perspective, we had 13,000 different people, unique users, use scooters last year and covered 60,000 miles in Rochester on them over a period of 4 months, which, as we were starting the program, I was flabbergasted by. I didn't think we would get that much use out of them. So pretty amazing. And then if you need access to a car, there's a Our Car program. They're located in downtown parking garages for now, but hoping we can expand upon it too. So a reduced rate to use a car over a period of time. You can rent it for the hour or weekend and kind of anything in between. And the last thing we'll mention is just sustainable purchasing. So how we spend our money really sends signals to grocery stores, but other vendors here locally. And it really matters. So if you're not sure on what your best options are or how you can help support certain products, there's a range of eco-label certifications, and EPA.gov does a good job of just kind of recognizing what the more reputable ones are that actually kind of aren't greenwashing. Greenwashing meaning like they're celebrating things that maybe they shouldn't celebrate from an environmental standpoint. Probably the biggest ways to help support the environment through what you're buying are through cleaning products, is a big one. If you're using like Drano in your house or other things that are very chemically intensive, I would ask or suggest maybe reconsidering that, because those are probably the biggest opportunity to reduce the emissions with just how you're cleaning your home on a daily basis. Also, kind of just living the mantra of reducing, reusing, and recycling as much as possible. So whatever you can to just reduce what you're buying, reuse where possible, and support stores that offer reused products, and then recycling as much as you can. You're going to be in a pretty good spot. And again, supporting local businesses in here, but speaking with your dollar really does matter. So if it reflects your values, you're doing a really good job. And also just what goes off the shelves dictates what needs to be replenished on the shelves. And if the environmentally preferable products are the ones that are leaving the shelves in the stores we frequent, the stores themselves are going to realize these are wanted and desired here in the community, so we need to get more of them. So some good options being listed here in the chat. So I want to just be mindful of people's time. I think I got through most of my slides, and then this last one here is just if you're interested in linking up into sustainability conversations here locally, here are 5 options of groups or ongoing kind of things that might be interesting to you. So green drinks, I know Mike is tied into, and he can probably speak to. It's a monthly meetup we invite a speaker and they talk about some sort of sustainability program or thing going on here in Rochester. And that's on a Thursday evening at 5:30. The drinks are not green, it's just called that. So if you're interested, and right now we're doing it virtual, so you can bring your tea, coffee, water, whatever it might be. I host a monthly sustainability series on the third Wednesday of the month. So if you're interested in that, feel free to email me, and I'll just type my email as well in the chat. And I'll get you looped into those kind of ongoing calendar invitations. The Sierra Club is active here in Rochester and a great advocacy group. There's another group called Rochester Electric Vehicles that is all things it's basically a network of people that are passionate about electric vehicles. And if this is something you're interested in purchasing, that's the group to go talk to, because they're people living it on a day-to-day basis. And they also meet. So you can get tied in with them. And then community education, which is how I think Mary found me originally, was we have a whole category of sustainable living courses. And this is one of them, but there are many others. There's one even on the Lawns to Legumes program that I referenced earlier. And we make an effort to make all of these sustainable living program courses free so that anybody that wants to can access them. So please take advantage of those if you haven't and you're interested in doing so. But with that, I'm sorry I went 5 minutes over. I did my best. But I'll make sure we get these slides to you and covered and linked and everything. So you can start working on this stuff if you're motivated to do so. Any other questions? I can hang on for a little bit.
Thank you, Kevin. We can also put the slides on the, we have a web page, and our Earth Keepers has a web page, and we can put the slides on there so people can get to it on our church.
Awesome.
I can have that set up later today. I'll do that.
Sounds great. Yeah, if there's any questions, I can hang out. Otherwise, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This is fun. And if there are other groups that you're all a part of that think might be helpful, let me know. And I'd be happy to do that too. This is my job. So happy to do it. Yeah.
Kevin?
Yep.
Can you speak to recycling in terms of plastic in this community? And is there any hope that we are going to reduce the kind of plastic that cannot be recycled at this point?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the type of plastics that can be recycled are numbers 1, 2, and 5. And the reason that is because there are markets that will actually buy those, that Olmsted County can access to sell those products to then be recycled. The other types of products cannot be recycled and are just burned. I would say there's kind of two things we can do about it. One is stop buying plastics that are not the ones that can be recycled, and rather bring your own packaging or own bags that you can put directly into them. Or ask for other options when you're at the stores. I think ultimately when the plastics companies came forward with this opportunity years ago, decades ago, they kind of sold everybody on a bill of goods that recycling would be prevalent. It would be able to be adapted to all types of plastic. And we found that that's not the case. And ultimately we were just sending a lot of things to China to be dealt with that China is no longer willing to accept. And rightfully so, right? I don't want to be a dumping ground for people's waste either. So I think for us, it's actions that we can take, right? It's just to buy the 1, 2, and 5, knowing that it can be recycled, and the things that aren't sold in that, try to avoid as much as we can, because right now it's going to be in a landfill or incinerated here locally. And it's probably not going to change soon.
Thank you.
Yep.
I will say that certain companies say that they take all plastics, but they don't, because they don't have anywhere to sell it. Like they'll take them, but then that can't be used. So we use Hometown Haulers, which is locally owned, and felt like they had the most honest answers for where our recycling was going.
Good
And
plug.
affordable.
Yeah, I could say my waste hauler, which is a very big company, continues to raise my rates unbeknownst to me. So if you haven't been checking your waste bill, mine increased from $76 quarterly to $108 quarterly over the period of a year during COVID. So I was pretty surprised that a private company would do that when there's a lot of folks struggling in our community. And I just found it because I happen to notice these things and like pay attention to them. But just a good thing to mention is if you haven't looked at your waste bill for a while, I would check it out because it's depending on your vendor, they probably have increased the rates for you. Any other questions I can answer or anything? It was just a perfectly clear presentation and it was perfect. Oh, I accept.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you all. If anything comes up, like I said, don't hesitate to reach out through my email and I'll try to answer it. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.